dorje chanche de lo na ro da ma ba me la che che ga bo ba de sa she ja ken ken karma ba she she choy ge je pan se na da nian da zha mian yin gen da rinpo che riwan pa sam ge xin de chen pa ma mo pa yin lo do ko lo rinpo che norbo rinpo che simo rinpo che sa she
다들라 답을 하기에는 막 얘는 쉬나 튀라야 니래 튀모 튀네 튀드니스 지시 써야 봐도 요즘도 개발전 튀드니스 지시 전주를 지고 요즘도 삼바라 니래 튀모는 아지비 동에 미스병 삼바오 개발의 생기 동에 미스베 사베서 초가라 니래 튀모그 초가네 담볼로메 러변라 소아답 되네 러변기 구조숨기 땡기 지향을 쳐봐 용어도 안했어 야나 대만 좀 구조숨 넘걸 미디 이 차를 쳐봐 빌라 러변기 지수 러면 되게 접을 차례 상계를 제주 좀 받아줘 달라 공수수 러변 달라 공수수 다음인 디시기와 튼튼의 손 지지 제주에 버리 지기보다 건이는 비죠 상계를 기도죠 되사다 저는 이 최철을 기도죠 소원을 기죠 긴줄을 기도죠 닝타바네 셰레 닝타바네 레숨 데바오 케버지기 초가네 저와등 루시데 제솜 담보네 계신이 된도로와라 맨데메도 저거 별로 소아답 되네 계신이 되다 로마드 디버스미르데 대신 네네도 케라시 놈 담보 구조가 된다 쳐봐서 교수송 편에도 마송이 님이셔 놈이 바람 무시 초가 차디 담보 윤에 슈비 유라 구정의 유시게네 차도 저거 별로 러변기 지수 되게 줘도 상계의 지수만 탐져다라 고수 러변다라고 다음에 디시기ው 디즈네스 지지네 지지 전중이 원래 지기보다 건이나 비수 상계 좀 되는 나는 교수죠 되사다 저와는 비죠 시원양에는 대비셔나로 교수죠 소원을 비죠 봐봐 전주서 7m 밖에 누나로 교수죠 셀렌 숨줘도 되네 엄버도 유지한다 무슨도 얼미 차다 줘봐비라 다 지지 케 진행에 3배 공원들을 겸돌려 숫자고 되네 더 코난 이유라 고수는 어서 답이 주기 차도 줘봐비라 교수로 와네 최담전 대만에 다음에지 지용어야 마주배 상계의 최다 기준 야 대지도 통화를 되는 미스비 겹다비 용동이 겹이는 대들어야 마주배 쉬면 돌래 성심에 비해서 교수송 강하시는 최담전 매버시는 수수마이 최도마이 최수마이 상계 양답으로 통하는 상계를 교수송 최담전 최긴 이제수송 통하는 최라 교수송 누제는 주마지 인이즈 매버 통하는 그들의 교수송 시송소 놈숨발에 제기 적어도 구조로 따라가 적으면 제벨에네 도대게네 세와탄의 담지당에 손탄의 담인 지소 티보민발의 대지 겹지 담법 시송대 대한 뒷목이 겸주네 세와 담지당에 수수 탐마인 받은 지소다와 놈을 겹하고 겹어지기 겸주네 티보민발 매지의 꾼을 겹하고 랍자를 지혜 랍졌음 제라가 랍졌음 최dwi게 랍졌음도 구유에도 대라 당번에 뒤에다도 구조 셔발을 점을 제지 타나 랑 세지서 표기에 셔발을 쏘다 자기 지행 구조 명하다 구조가 연디 제수 되면거네 안에야도 교수 들어와라 랍죠 대다가 제라가 랍졌음래 상계를 교수서 하시는 교수면 들어와든 돈양에 대해서는 상계달을 교수 되는 양다기 남의 라이신을 교수서 민주르시에 순서 Chöle gyabsu simjenal number chawa mijaden dole kyang. Tambe chöle gyabsu nöje sewe sumda xie songso. Gendule gyabsu mudi jana miden baden dole kyang. Gendula ne gyabsu mudi jana chawa mi yu xie songso. Chedin be labja sumle. Kunjo sangi kunjo ga den tiji jebe kuzo tana chaze chödum yenje le gyubar chawada. Chö kunjo ga den tamje gi bodi da ligwam tana yingru te yingru yenje le gyubar chawada. Gindu kunjo den den be chawlo tana serbe lebada ba yenje le gyubar chaw. Gyabsu suma penyo ge naba sangi bar chuba daba tamje gi den de gyurwada. Ngarje gi diwa tamje sebre gyuwada mida mimayi be parje gi mizubada sabe ngoba tamje rubada yu sonam chenbada demre gyuwada ngen sondo midongwada nyudu yangda buzo zobar sangyawa gyuwa sangyawa gyuwa
To begin by reading from the Jewel Ornament of Liberation on page 141. The time, there is also two sets of durations. In the common refuge, one takes refuge from now as long as till the end of this life. In the special refuge, one takes refuge from this time onward until ultimate enlightenment is achieved. The motivation is, there are also two types of motivation. The common motivation is to take refuge with the thought of one's own unbearable suffering. The special one is to take refuge with the thought of others' unbearable suffering. The ceremony. There are two types of refuge ceremony. In the common refuge ceremony, first the disciple supplicates to perform the master to perform the ceremony, and then the master makes offerings in front of the three jewels. If this cannot be arranged, then the disciple should visualize the three jewels in space and mentally prostrate and make offerings. Then the disciple repeats after the master and says, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, think of me. Master, think of me. I named, then say your name. From this time until I achieve enlightenment, take refuge in all the Buddhas, the supreme among those with 2 feet. I take refuge in the Dharma, the supreme among all of the freedoms from attachment. I take refuge in the Sangha, the supreme among communities. Repeat this 3 times from the heart. The superior ceremony consists of the preparation, the actual ceremony, and the conclusion. For the preparation, first a qualified master who is worthy of being served is offered a mandala with flowers and then requested to perform the ceremony. The spiritual master will accept if the disciple belongs to the Mahayana family and is a proper vessel. On the first day he prepares the objects of refuge, the sources of refuge, performs the offerings and explains the beneficial effects of taking refuge and the faults of not taking refuge. For the actual ceremony, on the second day, he performs the actual ceremony. First, the disciple cultivates the mind that the sources of refuge in front of him are the actual refuges, does prostrations and makes offerings. Then he repeats after the master in this way. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, think of me. Masters, think of me. I named so-and-so. From this time until I achieve Buddhahood, take refuge in all the Buddhas, the supreme among all those with 2 feet. I take refuge in the Dharma of peace and nirvana, supreme among all freedoms from attachment. I take refuge in the Sangha, the supreme assembly of irreversible bodhisattvas. Thus repeat 3 times. After that, the clearly visualized sources of refuge are invited, and the disciple visualizes them as actually present, prostrates, and makes offerings. Then thinking, now you know what should be done, he repeats the refuge ceremony 3 times as before. After that, he prostrates and makes offerings to the suchness source of refuge, free of the 3 spheres. All phenomena are primordially selfless, not established as having any essence. The Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha should also be seen in this way. This is the inexhaustible, eternal, unchanging, constant refuge. The sutra requested by Anavatapta reads, what is taking refuge with a mind free from busyness? Those who realize that all phenomena are non-existent and have no form, are not attributes and are not phenomena, see the Buddha perfectly. That is taking refuge in the Buddha. Those who realize all phenomena are the nature of the Dharmadhatu are taking refuge in the Dharma. One who realizes that the composite and non-composite are non-dual is taking refuge in the Sangha. The conclusion. On the 3rd day is the conclusion ceremony where one makes offerings to the 3 jewels with gratitude. The functions of refuge. The Ornament of Mahayana Sutra says, protection from all harm, freedom from the lower realms and being unskilled, or from being unlearned, freedom from the view that there is a person, protection from the lower vehicles. Thus it is the noble refuge. Thus, the common refuge protects one from all harms, the three lower realms, the unskillful means, and belief in an abiding person. The special refuge protects one from the lower vehicles and so forth. The precepts of refuge. There are 3 general precepts, 3 particular precepts, and 3 conducive precepts. The 3 general precepts consist of making a constant effort to make offerings to the 3 jewels, even in offering whatever one eats or drinks, not forsaking the 3 jewels even at the risk of one's own life or for great rewards, and repeatedly taking refuge by recollecting the qualities of the 3 jewels. The 3 particular precepts are, having taken refuge in the Buddhas, one should not take refuge in any other worldly gods. The Sutra of Great Parinirvana says, one who takes refuge in the Buddha is the pure spiritual practitioner. Never go for refuge to other deities. Having taken refuge in the Dharma, one should not harm other sentient beings. It says in the Sutra, by taking refuge in the precious Dharma, one's mind should be free from malice and the wish to harm others. Having taken refuge in the Sangha, one should not rely on non-Buddhists. As it says in the Sutra, by taking refuge in the Sangha, one should not follow non-Buddhists. The 3 conducive trainings are to respect representations of the jewel of the Buddha in every form, even a piece of tsatsa, to respect the representations of the jewel of the Dharma, the books and texts of the precious Dharma, even a single syllable, and to respect the representations of the jewel of the Sangha, the Buddha's robes, or even the patch of yellow cloth. The benefits of refuge. There are 8 benefits of taking refuge. One enters into the Buddhist path. Refuge becomes the foundation for all other precepts. Refuge becomes the cause for purification of all negative karmas accumulated earlier. One cannot be thwarted by the different human and non-human obstacles. One accomplishes all that one wishes. One is caused to gather the 2 accumulations. One will not fall in the lower realms, and one quickly achieves the perfect enlightenment.
다 디갑리아 디 투몽기 차가 숨비 갑리아 데네 듄디네 손디 지지 제주님 볼사 디 바지 이게 디 데서 노르데바도 섬으로 다지 가르스나 투몽기 뒤숨비 갑리아 지지 소에 봐도 레제즈 소요아래 데네 투몽기 차가 갑리 임비냐 단 드네 손디 지시 소에 봐도 사지 근데 용과야 임발라 지시 제주님 봐도 소아데 디스 가수에다 이게 디 노르데바면도 사지 근데 요래.
In the passage describing the common, the ritual for going for the common refuge, it says that I named such and such take refuge until achieving supreme enlightenment. However, this seems to be, this is probably a mistake in the text. And the reason for this is that in describing the duration of the common refuge, it's said to last until the end of this life, or as long as I am living. And so here it should probably read, I named such and such take refuge as long as I live. And so where it says that I take refuge until achieving the essence of enlightenment is probably a mistake.
데네 단도나 겸주고 슈두산에 안드링디 겸주 유디 슈규인 겸주스 저 유디 겸주 저 유스콜이야 도주 슈빈 증면서.
So now, during this discussion of the going for refuge, I thought I would speak in brief about the sources of refuge today.
다들이야 교수들 유들이야 아는 구조를 무슨 남았음 상계처럼 긴들이 구조를 무슨 남았음 이 말에
The sources of refuge are the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
군조숨 이바 군조숨 샤바도 지고래 되면 군조숨 소수기 ngōngē sōng samara, ngōngē sōng 군조 소수 남자 세베 돌이야. 되네 티바 다 오마 samara 왜 년뒤 대베 로당. 되네 티바 신비기 로데 조세민라를 치기 어디가 있으래.
The vehicles of the listeners and the Mahayana are the same in going for refuge, in saying that the sources of refuge are the three jewels. However, the manner in which they identify the nature of those of each of those objects, or the way in which they make the presentations of those sources of refuge, are different.
텔라야 년뒤 대베 로데 가장 쉬는 신기 다 망보지 슈가스케 민도데 임비나다 년뒤 대베 로리아 아니 상계 군조디 가르샤낭 사람 상계 제베 쳬스 상계 제베 쳬다 밀로블람 대샤임 버레드니 주사 년뒤 대베 로라다 직샤나 상계 군조당 그 상계리아 여체고 맨로 야나 템바샤게토발이야 상계사데 상계 따바와 마도베 다 상계 응어디 상계 제베 쳬 밀로블라는 샤고 예당 야나 상계 샤게토바더부디 상계 응어 이내다 상계 구조 마인사르지 근데 여체고 예다 나테고 딱지샤 니 제디 상계 샤가도 받아보디 상계 인라 상계 군조 마인스 라고 얘란 직디 상계 샤가도 받아보디 상계 딱바와에마도 상계 원에디 상계 제비시 밀어놓는디샤
Now, as I mentioned yesterday, it is not necessary to speak about the tradition of the listeners in too much detail. However, here, generally in the tradition of the listeners, in identifying the jewel of the Buddha, they identify this as being the qualities that make him into the qualities that make one a Buddha, and that is the path of no more learning. And so in this way, we have to distinguish between that and between the jewel of the Buddha. For example, with our teacher, the Buddha Shakyamuni, the Buddha Shakyamuni, in this case, he's not the qualities that makes one into the Buddha. So he would be, one could say that he is nominally a Buddha. The actual Buddha is the quality that makes one into a Buddha. Another way to describe this is to say that the Shakyamuni Buddha is an actual Buddha. However, he is not the jewel of the Buddha because he is not the qualities that make one into a Buddha, the path of no more learning.
다드네 다 텐더블 다 가다 년제 대회로리아 고란데 시주 미라도 두시아야 다 구조선 소소 남자 미라샤야 다디 리레이션 슈 먹어 제상 증명도 something.
And so, thus, in the tradition of in the way that the listener vehicle explains things, there are different traditions of identifying each of the three jewels, and it's not necessary to go through each of these.
다드네 Dadi Golia Tene Keverjing Yusumbe Golia, that Keverjing Summer. Teaching 2 moments, that the Degi Camdru Yusumbe Golia, Camdru the Koran Tagen Arola, Sangen Kusum Gidani, Chen Tabeju Shiva the Yang and Deva. Can you such a navigation somebody is the song?
Now here, when we talk about the sources of refuge for the special sort of refuge, that is the special sources of refuge in the particular Mahayana tradition, what it says in the jewel ornament of liberation is that the Buddha is the character, the nature of the 3 kayas, the Dharma is peace and nirvana, and the Sangha are the bodhisattvas dwelling on the great bodhisattva levels.
Tan di gaulia sangye di nga su tibashim gyula me denjo ne sumbege ene sangye duma chabala sobe yende geda dembe kamne thadu de sangye shawi mina paje thagen ya thagen da dis tun chewa ju mero samtung ye karasana dene sangye de thadu gi kep 타도 기업의 상계 코나에 비 줍젤이야 티버심이 규라메기 다 롱망부시 타나야래 레주사 디규젤 되네 아니 상계 모암 상계 친이 샤베 걸림비냐 버지 티버심이 규라만의 손베기 류마샤발라서베 연데 게단데 비겸네 타도 디 샤베이나 드그멘도 섬들을 줍쟁도
Now, when describing the Buddha in the Mahayana, according to the Supreme Continuum, the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, the Buddha is presented as having the 8 qualities of being non-composite and so forth, and this is the ultimate Buddha. And this seems to be very, very compatible with the presentation in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation. The reason for saying this is that below, when it presents makes the presentation that the only ultimate source of refuge is the Buddha, the Jewel Ornament of Liberation cites several verses from the Supreme Continuum. And so for this reason, when discussing the essence or the characteristics of the Buddha, then I think it is probably okay to then say that the ultimate Buddha is therefore also the 8 qualities of being non-composite and so forth that are taught in the Supreme Continuum.
Dibasmi gyula mi denju danolea duma cheshi lungi du shengi gengi tome ba kenda zeda nyubra de tuni demba sange nis marbe ta dindu jik baje sun yusiye drin du santa degi chidangi sange gi renshin namda ge yuen da lubru che da ge yuen da dene chidawa kembe yuen da chinyi ba kembe yuen da dagana shingi 这位原点党，女别原点党，这呢，让对不是所谓原点，现对不是所谓原点，是吧？他的这个，他说原点阶段，两百七送月不来。
And so the 8 qualities of the Buddha are as described in the verse from the Supreme Continuum as non-composite and spontaneous, not realized by other conditions and so forth. And so each of these verses, the meaning of this is that the nature of the Buddha would be first that that his nature is utterly pure by nature. That he is free of the adventitious stains. He has the wisdom that knows the nature of all phenomena, and the wisdom that knows the manifestations of all phenomena. He has the quality of love, the quality of kindness, and likewise also the perfection of benefit for self and for others.
Quality of power.
The quality of power, yes.
Okay. 다들은 최군적 신이대야. 그래, 대 사매님의 도매가 다스님 비추니 이din이 신이 전에 최스제 딱 한다라 사매님의 동님의 동매라서베 연된 예단된베 다 파베기기 남장가 덴바사르지바 파베기기 남장가 덴바 다들이지리야 샤고면로 섬트기요.
Now the qualities of the jewel of the Dharma are the qualities again listed in the verse from the Supreme Continuum, which reads inconceivable, non-dual, and free of thought, and so forth. So there are 8 qualities discussed in this verse. And so I think it's okay to say that the jewel of the Dharma would therefore be the thoroughly pure teachings that are within the stream of being of a noble individual.
다들은 긴두구조디 지대진이 나은 이시스바 당아버지 라메 가자. 다 야버 증입니다. 지대진이 나은 이시스바 당아버지 가자 라메 가자 지지 밥에 가서 지세 줘다. 다들은 유산 다디기 주주기 연대 계단대베 다디기 밥에 긴두 신이 되면 다들이야 주주기 연대 계단대베 차나 샤베 다 파고디 자고 있으래.
The nature of the Sangha is also described in a verse from the Supreme Continuum, which describes the Sangha as having the 8 qualities of logic and liberation. And so, in this terms, it is presented in terms of the nobles the noble Sangha of those who have these 8 qualities.
다 되게 티진 투모 모임 비에게는 겸주유 군조숨기 땅오 남샤로디 다 너르디바 좀 세비면 드르르 진스레다 제버 세비면 아니 시라비지 가르브다 시라 가르브레 드르르 연데 소솔라야 남샤 제버 첸 단 시라 자유베레
So that is an overview of the sources of refuge in the special tradition of the Mahayana. If we were to explain them in depth, then we could give long explanations of each of these qualities.
다디나네 뉴마 체신사 상계기 유엔den게 시에베도리안 뉴마 체신사들이야 근데 바지 가르버지 투모메인베 타겐기 숑더 튜베 투모메인베 가르버다지 다지당 타겐 나는 다 들리면은 투모메인베 남샤왕고 체야 유스 삼청도 뉴마 체신사들 투모메인 남샤왕고 체야 유스를 디까네지 인사를 삼청이에요. 가르에서는 다지 추구 다 수구 남반이부터 뉴마체베 고인다 마인사데 들려야지 투모가 남샤 망부지 시야에서 삼청이에요. 가르에서는 아주 릭 샤베 걸루야 릭 남샤 샤베 걸루야 타겐기 숑기 측신 왕점을 제버서므로 측 왕점을 제버이면나 되네 정신 남다디 뉴마체 다 모두 뉴마체 버지샤 정도 마세베 되네 되게 좀 Riksebe Kolia. Roshin number of Rikti, this is the massive Gingur Ridi, but in Dumaching or Jisha in Dustane. Tanam Jin, the Gingur Ridi Naba, Sukunama Nibati, Gingur Rilden, the Joy Shave in Dustana. And Judy Dumachina, Jebudi, Dumachet of Jamata Beta. Kaderuzina something though, the Indian Dujer Shadow in a manner. The Indus until G. Shiraki Karadazi. Two more main beach, Namsama Chai, can I chamber is something.
Now, when talking about the 8 qualities of the Buddha, the first of these is that he's non-composite. The Buddha is non-composite. And so this is, I think, very much fits with the particular presentation within the jewel ornament of liberation. And there are many very special presentations here within the jewel ornament of liberation, but this is one, it's a special presentation that is also actually a very difficult point. So the reason is, with the Buddha, for the Buddha there's the Dharmakaya, but there are also the 2 form kayas. And whether they are composite or non-composite is a difficult point and a particular presentation for this. Now, the reason for this is that in presenting the Buddha nature in the first chapter, the Buddha nature or family, there are 2 types of the Buddha nature and family, and one of these is the developing type of family. And this is described in the jewel ornament as being composite by nature. Now, and it's because of the 2 form kayas arise because of this developing family or developing potential. And since that developing potential is composite, composites have results that are also composites. And so this is a very difficult point, and it is one of the special presentations here and a point that needs a lot of analysis.
Tadane Gindu Kujo Sumbi Kabli Biliam, Gindu Kujo de Sachambol Nevation, Samba Sumbi in Dusane, Dritembe da Zoe Gindu Summerway, Gindu Zoro de Paji Tawa Salad Nevation, Samba Shagwa, such a Chagamerosum, the Ribichendo, Jidangi Kajwe. Gindu Gujo, come the Gindu Gujo, the Kondashubanazi, Rijugi, and the Geda damage to Shagare. The need is a power in that Rijugi and the Geda Demabe. Rijugi and the Nida Demabe, Rijugi and the Geda Demabe, Machaps. The need is an the Machavians and the power in a Arreta. Daddy Mencha Tossum Gidibasad, Mencha Tossum, Daddy Dua the Kabusto, Takanda Dodor, the power in a Rijugi and the Yeda de Baby, Machavich, Rijugi and the Ida de Baby, Rijugi and the Yeda de Baby, Machavsa, Rijikisha, Takandria, Cap the Dengi, Gindujo Zodina, Tabasasun Neve, and Chanju somebody by Shaka Surchi. Taimine Tegi, Dene Pabe Gindu Tamji, Gindujo, Mayensia, Delaware, Taimine, Gindujo Zorudi, and Tabasasun Neve, Chanju somebody Shaka and Menosum.
Now, here in the jewel ornament, it says that the jewel of the Sangha are those bodhisattvas who dwell on the high bodhisattva levels. And so this is identifying the primary Sangha here. So the primary Sangha is the bodhisattvas who dwell on the 3 pure bodhisattva levels, that is the 8th, 9th, and 10th. Now, generally, when we talk about the jewel of the Sangha, it is said that they have the 8 qualities of logic and liberation. And when we talk about noble individuals in general, then noble individuals do have the two qualities of logic and liberation. However, they don't necessarily have all 8 of the qualities meant here by logic and liberation. And the reason for this is that the nobles have different types of obscurations, different levels of obscurations. And so we can say that in brief, though all nobles do have the qualities of logic and of liberation, they do not necessarily have all 8 qualities of logic and liberation. And so, for that reason, it is those on the 3 pure bodhisattva levels that are here meant as the primary sangha, because they have all 8 of these qualities. This is not saying that all other nobles are not part of the jewel of the sangha. It's just saying that they are not the principal jewel of the sangha. The principal jewel of the sangha here refers to those on the 3 pure bodhisattva levels.
다나 생기 담배 쉬어야돼. 담배 쉬어 양에네 대바스. 두선두스탄다. 지당기 단디급이야 고된 고베 덴바 숨겨하다. 고베 덴바디 남준 지 가르에 런시 남다게 다 차르큐베 런시 남바다베 차르큐베 다 윤데 섬르베 다 드르질이야 샤고요레 대인비냐 갑들이야지 냥에네 제바사디 런시 남다게 차르큐베게 지 가르다 큐바점마이 바다 티지 이시에 지 샤고 면서서로 지 이시 고된 샤단들이야 아야 단도지 시라기 가셔야지 제바로 시라치야 유서 삼정이야.
Now for the jewel of the Dharma, here the true Dharma here is identified as the peace and nirvana. So this is generally identified as meaning the truth of cessation. Usually when we talk about the truth of sensation, we mean the aspect of being being naturally pure. But here, in discussing the nirvana that is meant here, it's not just the aspect of being completely pure. It is probably also indicates the mental consciousness. And so that is what is meant here. The mental consciousness is meant here, and this is an area that also will require a great deal of analysis.
남준다 동니 고쳐버사 송도 동니 고쳐버사 동니 고쳐버사디 데베 동베 동니 자마이마 동니 고쳐버사데 버지 가르에 이시에 비질이야 샤고메로 섬브르지 송송진이메 이시 진르비 샤고메로 섬브르지 다 간다르디 제바온 거 차이스라에.
Excuse me, I'd like to correct my previous translation. The cessation here is not mental consciousness, rather it is wisdom. And so the ultimate purity that is also wisdom. Now to translate what His Holiness just said. In terms of, usually when we think about emptiness, for emptiness that is truly effective emptiness or useful emptiness, then it is not merely the emptiness of being empty of true existence. Rather, we also need to understand it as being wisdom, and this is the wisdom that is empty, that is free of both the apprehender and the apprehended, or the perceiver and the perceived.
다드네 다 잡았겠도 다 디젤이야 드네 겁들이야 내가부터 터도 이게 개발 다 타견을 손유비 인도살라 내가부터 터도 이게 개발지 도도 수조 샤이.
In the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, it speaks about the distinction between the temporary and the ultimate sources of refuge. So I'd like to speak about the difference between the temporary and the ultimate refuge now.
방식을 최신지 메시지 제베치 최남니다 밥에서 땡기 yap셔 뭐이 노세지 다들 저기 거네 균신 넘버 C 거네 로블럼기 뒤베기 겹 탐시 타도 이게 뭐인 봐 내가 비교인 바 때문에 말해.
As it says, because they're given up and deceptive, non-existent, and fearful, the two types of Dharma and the noble Sangha are not the supreme lasting refuge. And so here, all of the sources of refuge that are on the path of learning are not the ultimate source of refuge. They are temporary refuges.
다들 담배 트는 저의 겸니 상계 녀식이 투바 최기 구진시 초기한테 터도 치를 제 다들 저기 다되게 가르된 거라서 터도 있게 상계 코라인 받던 거예요 그래.
Where it says ultimately the refuge of beings is the Buddhas alone, because the sages have the Dharmakaya and the Sangha ultimately becomes that. So this identifies the ultimate refuge as being the Buddha alone.
다들 인도산에 다 되게 빼나 가르에 로베 규기 로바 파베 규기 동영 숨도 베기 시도부 대 랑게 모겔이야 치마 매경 다 되나 치마 마방아 치마 랑게 모겔을 치마 탐지 매경 다 가르에 되나 치마 탐지 마방아 인베 인도산 디균전에 되네 다데 가르에지 온도 타르투베스나 승단 빠와자와 예소다 온도 터도 규를 개베잖아. 다감지 가르로 승단 빠와자와 다들이 주산에 들이 송어래지.
So to give an analogy of this, the wisdom that directly realizes emptiness during for the nobles who are in equipoise on the path of training, in its essence, in terms of its essence, is free of all stains. It has no stains at all. And so that is how it is in terms of its essence, but in actuality they have not eliminated all of the stains yet. And so for that reason it is, as it is said in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, it is discarded after you have traversed the path like a boat.
근데 로바 파바 될수 있네요. 가르쳐 땡이 깨면 비균센데 러니 직과단 제바다 러니 다 가르쳐 겹쳐외 가사 겹시 현래에 겹쳐외 가사로 지 러니 직과탄 러니 제바다 제베 가사다 집에는 민 시집당 시집인 직과다 제베 가사 다는 신기 겹쳐외 가서 겹땡 도나 현래 겹땡 괴베 가사로 건로차디 여비 인두산에 디균zel라 데네 잠내 타르토버데 마인스.
Likewise, the nobles who are on the path of learning are not the ultimate source of refuge. And the reason for this is that they themselves have fear, and they themselves seek other sources of refuge. And so they have the fear. The fear that they have is the fear of the obscuration, of the cognitive obscurations. Or alternatively, they are individuals who seek another source of refuge. They need to rely upon another source of refuge. So for this reason, they themselves are not the ultimate source of refuge.
다는 답변하긴 그런기다 주문이 공부대 가르잖아. 되는 코알 규지 주는 머리가 준비 주로. 된 주버드 남상에는 상계에서는 상황인들이 소위인들sana 니난 주베 박사 소리 니난 주베다 박사로디 마세게 받아 디시도단 라니 니난 주베 직버드 제바 니난 주베기 주버드 니난 주베 박사의 제바 인들sana 디 윤전 되네 가르로 터도기 겸마인바 그런 세브를 차도면서 something 정도.
In terms of the special presentation of the jewel ornament of liberation, in the prologue to the text it says, what causes the confusion of samsara? It is great ignorance. When is that great ignorance dispelled? It is dispelled upon achieving Buddhahood. And so here, until we have exhausted or eliminated all of the imprints that cause the confusion of dualistic appearances, then until that, up through that point, we have fear of the fear of the confusion of dualistic appearances. We have the imprints of the confusion of dualistic appearances, and so this is the reason why they're not the ultimate source of refuge.
다전에 투바상계 좀된데 더부디 터도기 교임의 윤선대 가라사나 다 최기 군예배 군예바 임비치를 다 최기 군예바 인자 대균선라 때네 전에 터도기 교배.
The reason why the sage, the completely perfect Buddha, is the ultimate source of refuge is because he has gained the Dharmakaya. So because he has attained the Dharmakaya, then he is the ultimate source of refuge.
dornachi lamjir dreba tartu basedu santa be dan be drosap be tartu bandobdi 가르쳐 상계 최 냠서 레네 비 drosap tartu bandobdi 상계 공부해 버래 시자 디균zel 때네 남jir dreba tartu be 겹디 타두기 겹사나 안다 전 담배 겹사나 안다 다디 다 집어 차대요 알아 남지 주바 타르토바 마인 비겹데 내가 왜 겹왕 군소 비겹 내주 질이야 관련 우유스래.
And so when it says one has completely traversed the path, so having completely traversed the path, this means coming to the final destination. And the final destination in Buddha Dharma is to achieve the state of Buddhahood. So when we say that we've traversed the path or come to the end of the path, this means that they've come to the culmination of the path. It means that they're the ultimate source of refuge or the final source of refuge. These two are the same. Those who have not completely traversed the path are a temporary source of refuge or a relative source of refuge.
다와나 터도 위겹디 템바 상계 지부마도 상계 군조 지부마도 많이 비나 근데 군조 숨 자고 김세민도 가서 라비미나 근데 유라메 된줄래 dene temba labjing itibosum de chesum de meba namge wanche ne gyosum number shawa yin cheche dene gyosum de number shawa de liya ta ta de gi gobadang goba 개발진 게 왕의 교수 넘버 샤바인 버스 somebody.
Well then, if the ultimate refuge is only the jewel of the Buddha, you might wonder, why is it that there are that we talk about the three jewels? In the jewel ornament, it presents the citation from the Supreme Continuum, which reads, because of the teacher, teachings, and students, the three refuges are presented in terms of three vehicles, three activities, and interests. And so there is a particular reason for presenting the three jewels as sources of refuge.
Today, you stand nega ugyab saadi, lam jedreba tartuba. Maina lam dene lam jedreba tartuba. Lam jedreba tartuba yonsu mazoba inea. Yonsu zobar tarna e chane. Da shawe gyab druji dene shago yusre.
And so the temporary or relative sources of refuge may not have completely traversed the path, but even though they have not completed the path, it's as if they have completed or have almost completed the path, and so in this respect they are presented as refuge.
내가 구ገብ텔이야 여와체비는 최다기 눈이야 그래 더도 구겹텔이야 근데 상계지 모르시다 드샤고 있어.
And so in this way we'd have to say that for the temporary refuge there are two, the Dharma and the Sangha, and for the ultimate refuge there is one, the Buddha.
다들이 너나 지당기 된담바도 군주비 겹사야지 남기 된담도 군주비 겹사야지 순고야 된담도 군주비 겹사야지 바 남샤 체단래야 민주와 가시지 용되게 있으래 되네 될래야 귤라메기 공부하는 시체네 내가보다 터두기 권에 적당직당 되네 난 가시기 탄에 대한 탄에담 된담대매고는 탄에 대한보다 된담대매고는 적당으로 지다. 다가나 신기 이제 조단 패바 뭐보다 딱바와 다 진짜기 거는 적당으로 망보지 용되게 있으래. 다 이면에 급들이야 지 된담다 터도 가서 된담다 구조 위ገብ디 귤라메 공부하는 시체네. 되네 내가보다 터도 위ገብ이 민기관에 저보다 늙지 이스라엘 섬정이에요.
So it's often said that there are the ultimate refuges and the relative refuge, and there are different ways of explaining and presenting the ultimate and the relative refuge. In terms of the intent of the Supreme Continuum, the Uttara Tantra Shastra, it is presented in terms of being the temporary refuge or the ultimate or the final refuge. Some speak of it in terms of the difference between the conventional source of refuge and the ultimate sources of refuge. Still others talk about the difference between the primary source of refuge and the ordinary sources of refuge, or in terms of the actual and the nominal sources of refuge. Here, however, it is presented as in the Supreme Continuum in terms of the temporary and the final or ultimate sources of refuge.
다텐더 군조 숨보디 capsu회의 균세함 가수회 군조 숨보디 오늘 전에 다지 가족이 깜네 지 깜네 가수회 깜네 스탬프 이비나 다캡 투구야 봐 아줄이야지 깜네 혼이야 군조 숨보리야 깜네 슈회의 균세함도 가려슬라입니다. Telea namjun zo de tangbu temba zoba sangye jumden de tembegi sangegi sangye de gyapsoye bar shena cheda gun ginduya shugi gyapsoye bar shingare stani di junzel tene zo de den temba gyapsoye sangye de gyapsoye bar de sheba de ta zo sungu yebre.
In terms of the reasons why the three jewels are worthy sources of refuge, why it is that if we follow them or if we approach them, they will be able to grant to give us refuge. Why they why the three jewels are worthy to ask for refuge. Usually, when we speak about this, we speak about the teacher, the completely perfect Buddha. If we are taught, if we understand, if it is explicitly explained why the Buddha is worthy, the Buddha is worthy of going for refuge too, then we can implicitly or automatically understand why the Dharma and the Sangha are worthy of going for refuge, why it's worthy of going for refuge to the Dharma and Sangha. And so for that reason, it primarily talks about the reasons why the Buddha is worthy of going for refuge.
다들이야 균세 당부디 가르사나 란 지고 탐제를 채와 이베 차네 아주 겹서야베 균세 당부디 데레스 데네 겹서야베 균세 니바디 신 지고를 채와 탑락해봐스 신 지고를 드웨게 탑락해봐디 겹서야베 균세 니바디 대송을 알아 다 겹서야베 균세 수바디 되네 투지 시험보는 일이 매봐 소마르다 투지 시험보는 일이 매봐 이 균세를 되네 교수의 균세 수바드 상을 알아서 되네 교수 되네 펜타와다 마다와 탐지기 된세베 차네 교수의 균세 시바드 상을 알아서
Now, the first reason why the Buddha is a worthy source of refuge is because he himself is freed from all fear. So that is the first reason. The second reason is that the Buddha is skilled in bringing others to freedom from fear. That is the second reason. The third reason is that the Buddha has no close or distant in his compassion. So that is the third reason why the Buddha is a worthy source of refuge. And the fourth reason is that the Buddha works for the sake of all sentient beings, those whom he is able to help and those whom he is not.
된제기 거는 다지 상계디 껴서야 봐. 다 오늘 전에가 다지 깜내는 저지 인방 아주 하고 이미나 상계 송배기 담배 최대야 껴서야 봐. 아주 통도그랬어. 시도그랬어. 그래서나 진짜 상계 코란 된제베기 가르쳐야지 개발도 방법으로 드시야 의미나 뒤송배 최대야 루아메바 뎀바 지 저래 사바로 지기 땅에 시에로 지기 기여버려 최대 밀로임바 지 가르쳐야 시에토베 의미나 텔라테네 아니 긴준라 접서 통과하라 가르쳐나 긴준디서 밀루웨게 취함 밀루웨 람래야 쇼네 때라야 냠는 시대에 인사 디균선을 되네 가르에 긴두야 밀루와 냠내 임바 냠내기 루아메베 껴임바 능이 신종 토르스
When we know that the Buddha is a worthy source of refuge, that he is an actual source of refuge, then at that point we can see or know that the Dharma which he taught is also able to provide us refuge. The reason for this is that when we see what a great and superior being the Buddha is, then we understand and we can we develop certainty that the Dharma which he taught is also undeceiving. And once we realize that the Dharma that he taught is undeceiving, then we will also understand that the Sangha is a worthy source of refuge. The reason why the Sangha is a worthy source of refuge is because they have entered the path of the undeceiving Dharma. They practice that path, that undeceiving path of Dharma. And so for this reason, we can also have certainty that the Sangha is an undeceiving source of refuge.
다들 이제래야 교수 송의 책서만 지점이 교수 송았어. 근데 교수 송의 책에는 장도 야나 다 교수 가서에 송마송기 세신도부터 가르치셔야나 다들 남기 도안에 통맥이 도안에 소반는 신기 되네 대연대시아바 개버시아바 드네 켈렘바 셴도 미모와 시권에 교수송이미나 아니 가르쳐다지 교수송 세시디 롱위에스 송야래 다 당부디 군조숨이 연대시아바 다드네 니바데 군조숨기 남편수기 개버시아바 다드네 켈렘바 군조숨 가수로다 수수 때문에 켈렘서 다 잡수 송아 그렇지 때문에 뭐 켈렘 다전에 시바디 셴도 미마와서들 셴도 미마와서들잖아 다 버지 군조숨을 셴베 때문에 켈 밀렘바 들으지 있어서 섬사르도
Now next is the question of the measure of going for refuge. How can we determine, how can we measure whether we've actually gone for refuge? And this is discussed by Asanga in his Vinashaya Samuchaya, the compendium of ascertainments. And he says that there are 4 qualities that going for refuge should have. The first is that we know the qualities of the 3 jewels. The second is that we know the distinctions of the 3 jewels. That is, we know the distinctions between each of the jewels. The third is that we accept, or that we commit to, that we accept the 3 jewels. In other words,
there are different qualities to recognize.
So for the second, the distinctions, it's to recognize the different qualities of each of the jewels. The third is to accept the 3 jewels, or to commit to them. And the fourth is to not say that you're going for refuge to others. And so this probably means that you are not going for refuge to other sources of refuge.
다 당분이 이 연대시아바다 개발시아바사데 디스 깔레르 자오르마다 시다시나 깔레 기마르송 부스다 디스 수수 깔레르 곁토이미나 아는 바지 시라 시에메도 브르시 기마르송 청해죠 다 드네 켈렘바사데 다 켈렘바사데 다 남주제레 가수레 상겔리아 최tem바벤 뉴시체 되는 최래야 되는 경무기 주시체 되는 긴줄이야 대대보다 담배 최주베기 조수송 조변 두시체 되게 겹수라 되이버래 안 되는 주사다 되는 잠도 시주상 가두이네다 잠도 제단으로 되지 좋아 겹수로당 대고조선 잠내 스케일랜다로 되지 되는 될 미세 강해 스케미도
Now, of these 4 qualities, the first 2, knowing the qualities of 3 Buddhas and understanding the distinctions, there are some difficulties there, but if you put some effort into it, then there's nothing that we cannot understand. The third aspect of the measure of going for refuge is accepting them. And so this is generally, as we often present the way we think of going for refuge, it is to consider or to conceive of the Buddha as the teacher of the Dharma. and to conceive of the Dharma as the actual refuge, and to conceive of the Sangha as our companions upon the path of practicing the Dharma. And so this is the way we normally think of the three jewels when we go for refuge, the way we normally go for refuge. And so there's nothing terribly difficult about this either.
다 드네 셴도 미마와사 디스칼레르 녀가사셔르 디바지 데레 섬탕게 가르사나 꾼조 섬레 셴베 짬네 셴케 밀렘바사데 다드린 인두사네 다 남바 상게베사디 지당 그 남바다 치바다 남베기 여와치야디 지 가시에게 따와까다 차게시에 권에 여와치야르 디 숭구요아레 다디 임베네야 다 용자들야 아니 신디바당 조지기 세반난신기 드네 치반 남바 짬주케 수만난시다 남바상게베 인다 마인사데 다 간다 군조순리야教授中嘛，都工作是搞出来的，这讲的是开来没来，但是这个过呢，下个月没得，但不是用着了是不是？
It's the fourth one that is the most difficult, the not accepting the other sources of refuge. And so this means that we are not accepting anyone other than the three jewels as a sort of refuge. So this is the most difficult one. Now generally when we distinguish between Buddhas and non-Buddhists, there are some who say that the distinction depends upon whether or not one accepts the four seals of the view. But the most well-known distinction is the distinction of the masters Shantipa and Atisha, who said that the distinction between Buddhists and non-Buddhists is the distinction of whether they go for refuge. And so, as is generally accepted, then if someone has, a Buddhist is someone who has gone for refuge to the three jewels, who accepts the three jewels as the sources of refuge.
다대야 지 군조선로야 깸내수 진바섬 시기 바지 가데르 지근다 지당 깸 군조선 깸 소마선 송레리 임비네 다 깸선 도당대야 안다가스 지 군조선기 군조선 깸내도 켈레 군조선리야 바 가슈지 깸슈 데바섬 시기 나버스님 차토 안에서 딱한도나 그럼 나와 사데 조데 군조선데 자외 깸내도 켈레 군조선데 깸내게 조 켈레 다든 켈레마 드지 고여비므라 마다베게 군조선에야 켈레 군조선 켈레비네야 이제 소소 로이 시불이야 저네야 깸내 신다지 켈레 깸내 군조선 마인비 깸내지 자외 깸내게 담버체 임베네 군조선데 다 깸내 그 제일 봐 여버삼식이 바지 다 나버를 차도 안에 성장도 드레인주산에 나버사디 지미지 다 구조스부디 깸내게 담밤 깸내게 조 자외 깸내서 켈레머를 드리지 바지 고유스를 삼적이요
But merely considering the three jewels to be a source of refuge, and merely accepting them as a source of refuge, it's a question of whether that actually makes you into a Buddhist, if that's enough. If you just go for just ask the three jewels for refuge, but if you don't actually, I wonder if that's enough to make you into an authentic Buddhist or not. So, in order to be an authentic Buddhist, you have to go to the three jewels as your primary source of refuge, your main source of refuge. um, uh, if you go for refuge to the three jewels, but in the depths of your heart, you also think that there are other sources of refuge, some other source of refuge who's your primary source of refuge or your main foundational source of refuge. But then you also include the three jewels among the ranks of those who can give you refuge. Then I sort of wonder whether or not you're actually Buddhist or not. And so in order to really truly be a Buddhist, you need to accept the three jewels as the highest source of refuge, or the primary sources of refuge, or the basic or foundational sources of refuge.
텔레야 중지시야요. 그 중지. 뭐디 암도 어리기 뽐보지요. 어리스야 돼. 룽바지미. 암도지. 암도 어리기 뽐보지요. 그랬어. 뽐보디 라세 좋은 제가 지. 라세 조. 라세 좋은 제가 치네. 다 라살이야 되네. 다 내상 야르사를 줘 봐. 정강. 내상 야르사를 게스트 하우스. 다 게스트 하우스 내상 될때 내상 되기 아마되기 되네. 다다디 암도 어리니 용배 뽕보텔라 거라 랍지 깨버렸어. 교랑 라세 좋은 제가 침비 로나 되네. 교랑게 암차나 somebody 디나로래 디나한다 깨발래야 세르다 괜찮은 도스 제가 되게 대소리 아버진 가르쳐 미 야보다 섭섭지 마도 라사디 당배 신감이네요. 꾸마만 보여 알았어. 꾸마르는 일이 알았어. 근데 인주산에 대주 강의 하고 말해. 근데 인주산에 그저 꾸마고 있는가 알아. 꾸마 구소나 되네. 현재 슈베 펜 매바 님이 용거레스 디보만 보소거레스 랍지 깨버렸어.
There's a story about this. Once there was a chieftain from the region of Ari in Amdo. And so this chieftain from Ari, which is a small area, it's an area in Amdo, he went to Lhasa to see the Jo Shakyamuni statue. And when he got there, he stayed in a guest house there. And the landlady of that guest house then told that chieftain from Amdo, she gave him a little bit of advice. And she said to him, "It's very good that you've come to to go for a pilgrimage and see the Jo Shakyamuni statue in Lhasa, but you've got a lot of gold tied around your belt and within your cloak. So you better be really careful about all that gold and all that jewelry that you've got on it. Lhasa may be a pure realm, but there are some thieves here. So you better be careful of those thieves, because you never know who might try to snatch your gold and such. And if that happens, then not only is there no benefit to having come for the Dharma. In fact, there are there's not only is there no benefit to having come on pilgrimage, but there are also problems and faults, and there's also wrongs that will come of it.
다 네모티에서 말 네모데 정강게 아마디기 랍자 망부게 다 그디 고선 라이스 다 간다 이내야 오늘 구라 라자 좋아하는 데잖아 세 유제 탐지 암타나 룩니 침브레스 세 유제 탐지 디나 룩니 침브레스 주제 좋아치 되네 꾸마 디즈기 민디솔라 कुमार ता मिंदी सोला ता सर मांगबो ये सम थेने मिदी जे थेने चिमरेस ता तने कोसोती bombo deso ता de demo मांगबो ता है demo मांगबो ता ला तने demo deso la सेमी तने खांदोन जुचे दे देबे कबलिया तने ददादी 당기 랍자 개상 상마 제소 조 만제 거네 라세 조 만제 거네 yen nalo la male kone kuma di zugi serda genjada tana porba chunje samalo kuma kuini ki sores ina ku ha koymas ku hama oche tene 라세 좋은 제 찾으사네 tene shine 세단 gensa 상을 라서 하건 tene 무기 tene 바고 코랑 무기 코랑 가라 tene 그 라레스타 나서 퍼율이 대회 갈라야 좋게 투지 셴버레스가 도스 니지 셴버레스가 도스 바트링 오늘 투지면 하고 송스 예 미세 가나 사샤베기 세든 의도 타나 퍼바든지 상마 토서 라세 저처럼 팅지 제가 연디 니데 찬로에나 망보 제가 연다 간데 찬로
So the landlady gave him a lot of advice. He listened to it and he said he understood it. But then when he was going, he just put all of his jewelry inside his cloak. He tucked it inside his cloak. He put all his jewelry and all his gold in there. He put his cup and everything in there. And then he went off. Now, the thieves in Lhasa watched him carefully. They followed him. And this chieftain from Amdo was walking around, and there's so many things to look at. He was looking at all of the different things that he just forgot all of the advice. He had all of his gold and jewelry and even his cup tucked inside his cloak, and he just forgot about it entirely. And so the thieves were very clever, and they managed to steal everything, all of his gold, all of his jewelry, and even his cup, before he even got to the Jowo Shakyamuni statue. And so he went to the statue and he saw the statue, and then only at that point did he realize that he'd been robbed of everything. He had nothing left, no gold, no jewelry, not even a cup. And then at that point he started to cry, and with tears streaming down his face, he said, "I've come all the way. While I was in my homeland, we thought of the Jowo Shakyamuni as being so compassionate and being greatly compassionate. But now, only once I've gotten here have I realized how little compassion you have. These are all the jewelry, and all the gold that I've gathered up through in my entire lifetime, and just seeing you once, it's all gone. I don't know how it is that anyone could ever see you more than once."
Today you say the minginjirendu sam. Chosa the minginjirendu sam da ko ten da. Ne da Quran drangana pa losores. Drangana losus sane. Da drangangi neboti karsati nezadi nemodi. Da ko mudegi ve toin du sane. Da karesus tires, ke kares. Da kezu pögi cho, da pösla ro yanti du. Pögi cho de tuji chembremidos. Nga tangbu solaris. Nga tangbu tons. Tare nebotegi. Dat kyoran de labjuyo manas. Nge kyoran de labje gyayin bas khasangma. Labje gyayin di manyeba di pungsoro madobe. Lasa chola tawa zane manas da. Tabe lasa chola nyeba zane manas. Lares.
And so he really thought to himself, the Jowo is really terrible. What a horrible person the Jowo is. And so he went back to the inn, and when he got there, he spoke with the landlady, saw him, and she saw him crying, and she said, "What happened to you?" And he said, "You Tibetans," and here saying Tibetan meaning Central Tibet, you talk about your Jowo Shakyamuni, but he has no compassion at all. He's turned me into a beggar, complete beggar now. And then the landlady said, "You shouldn't say that. I warned you. I told you all about it. It's your fault for not listening. It's not the Jowo's fault in any way. The Jowo did nothing wrong."
결항 강변나래 내장나는 셔두산의 수직의 초록의 가 민도스 초강나 레드 조요 강반나 레드 매바차스 땡땡 조디 싱그레스다 마도디 라네드네 아고 당동 도사리레스.
But he still suspected something and he said, he said, before I left and I was in your inn, I had everything. No one had taken anything from me. When I got to see the Joe Shakyamuni, there was nothing left. The Joe definitely knows what's up.
오다들이 유산 다 텐더지미나 다디 가르사나 다 코여기 짬내 은행더부디 스르당 우유단데도 다 짬내 은행더부 직선말에 다 dinner 진 두시체 고조선부데 지 바지 짬내가 제일 외래 유기래 되입니다. 짬내 조르스나 짬내가 담보만 비체 짭주서데 스르당 우유다 다 din산도지미나 아니 배샤다 dinner 배 짭주에체 배샤라서나 다네 오늘 전에 봐 인생 가셔야지 님이고 군조선부터 저 잠르던데 내가 잠르 참 오늘 잠르듯이 지 간도연 계절로 듣는 내가 맞으나 미세 님이 고매고 계세요 맞다 간다 드레르 제 뉴스 디균셀 되네 다되기 군조선 자외 겸내서 kelem 디고 유스를
And so for him, his real source of refuge, what he thought of as his real source of refuge was his gold and his silver. Of course, he included the 3 jewels in his source of refuge, but they weren't his primary and not his highest source of refuge. His actual source of refuge he thought of as his gold and his silver. So for us these days, it's our money. If we lose our money, then we're not going to sleep. We won't have any sleep for several days or several nights. But if there are a few days where we don't manage to recite our refuge prayers, forget to go to refuge, we don't lose any sleep over that. And so this is what we mean when we talk about the 3 jewels as the basic or the foundational primary source of refuge.
다 되려야 어다들이 뉴스나 디균셀 되네 간다르 지가르에 다 대양 아주기 텔레 트레이드 쉬비미나 아주 남주행기 디 까마 감상기서 말다 까마 감상기 되네 까마 거유기 원주 초신 디상다 원주 초신 초신의 탕가 초신의 세탕 이제 망보 용대도 이내 원주 초신의 세탕 들이야 아는 도스파다데 주산에 눈주를 가시 봐 나랑게 통주엘이야 원주 초신의 세탕이 천년을지 용거여다매다선 들에 더버를 치고 더버 영고 윤선 가셔야죠 직대 가라서나 나 류리야 이담데서 샤베 커돌이야 에네 이담고 나로다 이담고 조디 지당 그 유탐제게다 이담데 다 조디 콜로 대셔 다 뭐유군이 영인데 콜로 대셔 임체 안에 그 유바 탐제게 다보 그 유바 탐제게 냠내기 조디 콜로 대셔 저에 위메래 디 나네 장한테는 까만 감사한데 다 콜로 덴쇼기 나네 장 아데 융가데 좋은 제네 도시 파모 도시 파모도 좋은 제에 인주산에 되네 이담기 좋은로디 다 오늘 지나다 도시 파모 연구야 놓치기 요래 예 원주 초신 세단님버들 나로래 조 도시 파모 지자분들 방법 제수 이내 딩상기 감상 응원을 초심 망보지기 때 이담기 조디 콜로 덴셔 임베지 콜로 덴셔 대야 되네 퍼지 덴셔디 양디 가져와요. 시샤디 망부여 됩시. 시야다 차 망부여 됩시. 그러지. 버제다 덴저 지불로 그러지나 가르지라. 다 지불로인데 지불로 그러지면은 다 지부벨로 주진 지부벨로 그러지 지면로. 이나 주진 지부벨로기 덴저데 남규 감사나로를 쉽지기 냠네 잡는 거 말에 반대 뒤숨 캠베기 토덤간생아에 나제의 규백이 덴저디 덴저 링기 시시 천이지 봐도 요 말에 르인두산에 따디 간제르시나 something 더버르직 사소.
Now, to sort of digress from here on speaking about refuge, in the Karma Kamsan tradition, we have the 4 special preliminaries, among which there is going for refuge and prostrations. And in the tankas of the field of accumulations, that is the tankas for the refuge practice, within these tankas, I think there are some mistakes, and I wonder if these are actually the authentic, and I suspect that they may not be the authentic images. And there are several reasons for this. The first of these is that in the tankas, in the front, there are all the yidam deities. Now, within the Kaju tradition in general, Chakra Samvara is the primary deity as the primary deity of the mother tantras. And so the primary practices for all of the Dakpo Kaju lineages is Chakra Samvara. For the Karma Kamsam tradition, it is the feminine aspect of this, the mother or Vajravarahi, whom we primarily practice. And so really the primary Yidam deity should be Vajravarahi in these tankas. And that is how it is in some old tankas that I have seen. They place Vajravarahi as the primary Yidam deity. However, these days, most of the tankas of the refuge tree make the primary deity into Chakra Samvara. And the Chakra Samvara that they depict is one who has many faces and many arms. So this is the Chakra Samvara from the tradition of Drilbupa. So that's the position of the great master Drilbupa. However, this is not the Chakra Samvara practice that we do in the Kamsam tradition. There are the 5 sets of 5 deities of Dusum Khenpa, and among them there is Chakra Samvara. The form of Chakra Samvara that is found in that tradition, in our tradition, is the co-emergent deity with 1 face and 2 arms. And so this should be the primary deity.
다른 신기 이담 다조디 이담 도시 파마체 델레야다 이담 시줄 하소 이거데베스 고가다 디디 고르두산에 아니 이담 델레야 아주 뒤숨케베가 토담 가생아 수베난다 지 조데다 도시 파마도 이미 인주산에 대기 파몰항아디 디 전도도 된 타고르도 되는 드라마랑알라서 베기 나제 현기 거르데바 된지 TV네야 즉 디지털 된지 TV네 아버지라서 삼정도 디지털이야 겨워야서 랑아디 아니 까마보 군지니바 주신 까마보시기 다 이담 개버도 봐봐 인두산 텔레제네 까마 감상다 이담 조치에 테르 개체 테르도 사디오레 안데 인두산에 텔레서보다 이담 개체 체도 파도 디나르야 소신기 경고 나로리아 소신 나로르바 이담 개체리아 지 제아르 근데 충분히나 아니 야부르 주면로서 들 대소
So the primary deity should be Vajravarahi, and then she should be surrounded by many of the deities, some in union and so forth. And these should primarily be the deities who are taught in the Dusum Khenpa's 5 sets of 5 deities. So Vajravarahi is one of these deities, and she's surrounded by her retinue. So the 5 deities of Vajravarahi are included. But then she should be surrounded by the other deities of 5 sets of 5 deities, including Tara and so forth. And if the tankas were drawn in this fashion, then it would be good, I think. Likewise, there are the 5 deities of Gyalvagyatso or Jinasagara. So Gyalvagyatso was a special Yidam deity of the second Karmapakshi. And because of this, Gyalvagyatso has become one of the primary, or is included as one of the main deities of the Karma Kamsan tradition. And so he should also be depicted. So I think that if the tankas were painted in this manner, then I think that would be very good.
다드네 양치기 가르쳤는데 월이야. 다 최경 숙마도 줘야. 최경 숙마도 지도사네. 나랑 엄마 초주가리야 진용유에 소신나라려야지 최경 망고쇼저 다바지 감상게 최경 유세대 디나 지구 예바르 지구 지구야바르 유차르 체리 다임빈에 대야지 드니 다티상 소신 탕가 망고지 나라려베 워들이야 최경 오늘네 최경 주니슈 지도 가시는 나랑게 왜습니다 가르면 이제 가시 지 근데 가리 하시라랑 고정면도 간다 제네다 최경 망고 싶지 지도 대대 최경 망고 싶지 지대야 돼 가지고 지나 삼천이 뭐게 탕가닝과 대주 나라려야 다 망고용 가르숨스 지다지다가 최경으로 제위미나 아니 최경디 바데 뒤숨 캠베게 다 뒤모마인비 고랑기 리규네 고랑기 파면은 막 유대비 최경데 되네 라모를 좀 게모 다 라모로 구송도기 라모 숨 예배 나네다 버제 토기 라모데 말베 드리시래 되네 좀 게모래 되네 조진 까마 버시 걸리야 까마 버시디에 다양 고랑기 미규디 닝메 미규지도세 인주산에 되네 지 공보당 공보 베르나보당 다는 신기 가수에다 다는 신기 되게 포냐 베나지기다 칠레주베 까니기 칠레주베기 칠레주베 랭갱 조르디 안에 탐제 도르질리고 도시미 인주산에 대나버니 때문에 인주산다 망공 가르숨세 아니 다 까마감상이다 최근 tum가르베다지 최경 조르디 대숨 차려요 다 지단 대마인비 되는지 최경 코로나사들 영디 열봐 코로나 다들이 남주 탕간닝버디 주나로 망공 가르숨마도 신다가 민도 아들이 인주산에 아니 바 먼저 소신 나라를 저 개비세다고 예비인 그래서 뒤 나라라더니 배 최경 미게 통제 베르제 과세디 야비게 주샤나 아야다 드리라면서 도와지 사소
Now in the tankas, below the Yidam deities, there are all of the Dharma protectors, the Dharmapalas and the Dharma protectors. And so when I thought of this when I was young, I thought, when I was little, I thought, this should be all of the Karma Kamsang Dharma protectors. They should all be there. But when we look at the refuge tankas, then for the Dharma protectors, actually there are like 10 or 20 different protectors there, and I don't even know who several of them are. And so they just draw a lot of different Dharma protectors there, and I wonder, how is it that can be right? Actually, there should be the three Dharma protectors, the Ranjung Hamo, the Gombo Bernak Chen, and Dorje Lakpa. So for Dusum Khenpa, his particular Dharma protector that came from his ancestral lineage was the self-arisen goddess of the self-arisen queen, or the Ranjung Gyalmo. And so there are actually three of these goddesses, the deities of body, speech, and mind. And so she is probably probably here we mean the deity of the mind, the self-arisen queen, or Palden Hamo. And then Karmapakshi, the Mahasiddha Karmapakshi, came from a Nyingma family, and his protectors were the protector Beranak Chen, the protector with the black coat, and then also the messenger or servant of Beranak Chen, the Dorje Lekpa. He's the primary deity who accomplishes the activity of Beranak Chen, so that is Dorje Lekpa. And so in this way, the primary Dharma protectors in the refuge Tanka should be Palden Hamo, Gompa Beranak Chen, and Dorje Lekpa. But that's not how we generally see it. We generally see it written, see the Tankas drawn with many different Dharma protectors put in there. But in the old Tankas, if we look at it, we should only see we only see those. In the old Tankas, there are only those three protectors who are included. Now, when we were doing the Ngundor practices, the preliminary practices, probably they think that, all of the sources of refuge should be put there, so we should draw all of the Dharma protectors in the Tanka. But I really wonder whether this is okay or not.
다 될래요. 지당에 라막 담박하시에 가르친 거로서나 아니 아주 초신 세대에 걸리야 다 간다 교육 세대 거래. 겹수에 같이 그게 초신 전략 shagoore. Tene Hindustane, ne chögyong yishiba madobe, jikden badiso shogyo madason. Ya lama tamba khashe gadason sana, ngo yishiba yina ya namba jikden bi tsusungo diso yang shogyo madason. Sushin nalole ya shogyo madason. De shame jobe gyumzen bji, gyumzen samara, pe chasha nas. Pe chasha bi bina pena lama chimbon bji dang, pombo chimbon bji tende ji. Dago secret samara sangdab ge ngane mi pheba la ba zu ni samara mi pheba imba na shin che ne tulo de mi kyuma na shin kö ne ene chilo le chimbi mina chilo ndo ga ya sangdab chen de ndo ga ya ene khashi pombo de dang lama de gyu ba khashi o lama de da pombo de imba ngo shi na ya ngo shin ga ba samsa ko tulo pheba kö de ne ko dong da dongba de ngo shin ga ba 동바 ngoshin sane ana lamsang tene ngoshin sane ana lamsang ti namgyu lama la chige bana chi chache tene tene chebina ana lama de tuni maras ko garasan kanzu ni sangdabgi sangdab mi phebal judi be ko khu namgyu ne chi cheje ana chache de chesha ko lama konosa garo te midi nge be cheshi tukju nge plan tukju to san tene yusan da khogi lama sangdab jubida hako yundusan korangi namgyu mi pheba na shin che kokbe na ne hako na ya chik chilo le ya hako ma chung tong to de debi na lama di kare lama ina bomba ni tu nieres taga na shin gi chogyong yishiba de so ngo yishiba ina ya namba jikdim bi chu sung go ko ba yunze ya res namba jikdim bi chu sung de be de nga zu yang be ji shibi 베가르로 이시바나시 바야티 지비지 짜샤나 고수 콘로사나 고수 투게 하고 말았어. 드네 유산 디 균zel 때네 거의 지딘 비추슨 거를 거바 윤제야래. 근데 거바 윤제 예바나시 디살바 샤샤나 야 얼마다 딜리야야 시비지 제지야. 이시비텔이야. 야 쪽지 저비나 샤드리체네. 아니 디 저거 말해스. 안 들었어.
Now, there are some There's some great lamas who say that when we draw the refuge tanka, then it should include all of the sources of refuge, but not those who are not really sources of refuge. So for that reason, only the wisdom Dharma protectors should be included, and not the worldly Dharma protectors. And in fact, there are some who also say that even if the protector is a wisdom Dharma protector, if they take a worldly form, they should not be put in the tanka. And so what is the reason for that? Well, the reason for that they give by an example. It's like, the example is, sometimes you have a great lama or a great minister or official of some sort. They want to go out in disguise. They don't want to go out in their normal form. They want to go out in disguise. They put on ordinary clothes and sort of disguise themselves, and they go out in secret wearing this disguise. Then imagine that there is someone who recognizes that official or recognizes that lama. They recognize them, but when they recognize them, if they wearing the ordinary clothes and so forth, they recognize them. Then at that point, they need to treat them like an ordinary person. If that person who sees them then recognizes the lama and then prostrates to them and so forth, and then like that, prostrates to them and treats them with respect and so forth, then the lama or the official's disguise is blown, and they're unhappy about this. And so someone who is smart in this in this instance, someone who is smart will realize, oh, they're in disguise, and so they'll treat them not in the way they ordinarily would, but even though they know inside, they'll treat them as a regular person. And by doing this, then they're able to please the lama or to please the official. So it's the same, they say, with the Dharma protectors, the wisdom Dharma practitioners, wisdom Dharma protectors. In essence, they may be wisdom deities, but they may take a worldly form, and there are reasons for why they're taking worldly forms. So therefore, when we take these and we elevate them into some high position, then they're not pleased about. it. There are reasons why they need to appear in worldly forms, and to elevate them into the level of the wisdom deities is not okay, say these lamas.
카시에 삼려나는 최교사한테 비지 소수 순급쟁이 소수 보디가르로 진행 상태는 유스래 카시지 소수 순급쟁이 보디가르로 진행 상태네 내 말에 그렇죠 민의 최경다도 최경계 최순급쟁이를 말도 미게르바지 순급쟁이 보디가 말에 근데 카시에 삼려나는 소수 개바 순급쟁이인데서 나를 내버쟁이 돈을 최경 땅 따다서 기타는 시제 나를 내버쟁이 돈을 텔레 최경의 기타는 시체는 봐 소잡주 들으죠 봐 나를 팬도 챙겨도는 야텔레 최경당 고베 약보소 나를 내버 챙겨도는 아니 콜레 최경당 꼭 따다서 근데 말에 이 미겔라 다 되지 딱보 다 되지 말해 대 멤버팅도 최경 체단 되면서 이미나 그거 가르쳐나 수수 최대 팀바 루나 답교시그래 수수체도 믿음을 주는 소소를 내버게요. 가라 바제 땅. 그 최경이라 와. 근데 최승급 증인데 수수기 최도 팀버 죽으면 왜는 최경되게 다데 최도 믿음을 주게 되는 내버게요 와. 인도산에 근데 디균zel 때에 최경사의 최승계는 마도베 가사 게르승급 증이었어. 말해. 이나야. 라니기 최도 팀버 주베이미나 라니기 최대 팀법에 냠내치들 주버 임비임이나 아니 최경 대속이 라나야 최대 팀법 중간 가사들 네버 체베 파르제다 기다 탐제 살지고 알아. 근데 디양 고쳐고로 맞지. 삼사 최경 샌디 바지 직 가르쳐야지. 다 수수 게르기 직 보디가드 지 인사사로 보 게르기 다 수마로 지 인사사로 다 들이 챙거 봐. 최경 체는 내면 집이나 들려야 말아. 이제 균전 때네. 도나 다 등기 주변에 시래. 다지 초신을 나눠야 최경 방법 지려야 돼. 최경 방법 집이는 검도 말해. 다 들이 주산에. 다 될래 봐 최경. 다 디 망경 가르선도 드레시 주경시 여비는 바지 지금에도 섬들을 챙도 대도 뭐죠나야 베는데 바지 고랑 고모 고랑 나 그냥 고모 아래 다 고모 집어서 그냥 한번 도트에 나지 다들 인도산에 다 추경 부주도 무주니 예외체 다디니 예나 되는 바지 저기 길삼 정도 드린 인도산에 단도나 진짜로 직 토네 어다디 이 오늘 소신 트렌드지 나도 지나 가셔스금도
Sometimes when we say Dharma protectors, people think of them as like bodyguards for individuals. But that's not how they are. The name they're given is Dharma protectors. So they're not there to be bodyguards. They're there to protect the Dharma. So they're particular. So often we think of them that we have the Dharma protectors, and if someone does something harmful to us, then we're going to set the Dharma protectors on them, like a dog. It's like we're setting a dog on someone else, and like the Dharma protectors are going to go bite the people who harm us, like the dog going to bite them. And if they treat us well, then the Dharma protector, or if they help us, then the Dharma protectors will then treat them well. But if they harm us, then we're going to set the Dharma protectors on them. But the Dharma protectors aren't like that. They're not protectors for individuals. They're not bodyguards for individuals. An authentic Dharma protector protects the Dharma, and so if we practice the Dharma properly, then they will benefit us, and if not, they will cause us difficulties and obstacles. So it is the Dharma that they are protecting, and so if we do not practice the Dharma, then if we aren't practicing the Dharma properly, then the Dharma protectors are not going to benefit us. So it is the Dharma protectors are protecting the Dharma. They are not bodyguards for individuals. However, if we are doing our Dharma practice properly, according to the Dharma, then the bodyguards will help us by eliminating all those those who cause us difficulties and who make obstacles for us. And so this is something that we need to understand, that they're Dharma protectors, not individual bodyguards. Sometimes we think about them as being, the Dharma protectors as being similar to bodyguards, but that is not really the authentic Dharma protectors. And so as I was mentioning before, when we talk about the refuge tankas, then we often draw them, they're often drawn with many Dharma protectors in them, but actually we can't even visualize that many Dharma protectors. And so for the Dharma protectors, it would be fine if we just had the three of Rajang Lhamo or Bernak Chen and Dorje Lakpa. That would be fine. In fact, if you can't even visualize that, it might be fine to just have the protector Bernak Chen, but if you have just Bernak Chen, then maybe Palden Lhama will get a little miffed at you. So better not do that. Maybe if you just imagine that there's some male and female Dharma practitioners, that would be fine. So at any rate, this completes my digression about the refuge tanka.